Okay, welcome everybody. This is Gabriel with Casual Bricks. I'm joined by Justin, who you've seen before. And today we have a coworker with us, Steve. Steve is a history enthusiast. Steve, why don't you go ahead and tell us about yourself?
Hey, thank you, Gabriel. Justin, it's great to have you here at my house. Thank you for coming so much. I am a military historian in the Army. I'll say that on quotes because, like in the military, I mean, it's a title, but I'm not really a professional historian. But I am a history enthusiast. I love history. It's my passion, my hobby, and a big important part of my life. And I'm very excited to talk about how Lego and history intersect. I'm very excited about that. So,
Okay.
looking forward to this.
So, I don't know if you know this, Steve, but Lego has historically not necessarily aligned themselves with military vehicles or things of that sort due to not all, but modern conflict. They don't want to be kind of associated or aligned to that. And I think that's very interesting, especially when we look through historic lens at different sets, such as what we have here with the Colosseum. I didn't know if you had any insight on.
Sure. And when we talked on the background to this, let's not think how our idea came out, right? Because Lego stays away from violence, right?
Yes.
So I thought it was very ironic that they had a special set on the Colosseum because that is the temple to violence, right? That's where it is. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. That is where people, when they're and worship pretty much the god of violence, right? To have people there, gladiators fight and died, and prisoners, and all those things, or horrible things that we'll see today, right? So I thought that was interesting. But looking at this set today, I realized that is the modern Colosseum, right? So that is already crumbling, and is that what we understand today as the Colosseum, the perhaps one of the top 5 recognizable buildings in the world, along with the Eiffel Tower, the Great Wall of China, and the Taj Mahal, and the pyramids, right? I think the Colosseum is up there, right? It's very iconic, very, very recognizable, and I think that's one of the reasons probably why Lego decided to have such a wonderful set. I love it, by the way. How long did it took you to build that?
Took a couple weeks because, as you know, I geobat, so I'm at home all the time.
Okay.
But talking about the way it's viewed now,
Yes.
he said it's an icon. Everyone can recognize the
Yes.
Colosseum and associate it to what it is, what happened there. But at the time,
Yes.
when it was built, was it built to showcase the might of Rome, or
Sure.
for, I guess, pagan games? And what
Yeah.
was the primary?
All right, I can give you a little bit of history of the Colosseum, right? So it starts with gladiator fights, right? So everybody can understand what that entitles, right? We all have watched Gladiator, right? Great movie. So they started in the early days of Rome, right? Very early days of Rome, when Rome was still a monarchy, right? When they were part of funerary rites, right? Gladiators will fight when a chieftain, somebody of importance, died. They will have prisoners of war fight each other, right? As a kind of like call it a sacrifice or a ritual to appease the dead, right? And that probably precedes the Romans, the Etruscans, which were the peoples that live around the same area the Romans are in Italy, predates the Romans. Started, and probably the Romans adopted it at one point. And these were prisoners of war and slaves that were made to fight after somebody of importance will die, right? And to appease the spirit. And it was a bloody ritual, right? As time progressed, it turned into still a ritual, but also a spectacle, right? Something that is meant to be watched, which is what spectacle in Latin means, right? And Julius Caesar was one of the prominent Roman figures that used gladiator fights to advance career, right? So they will put a great display of gladiatorial fights. Of it, I think it was like 300 pairs of gladiators when his dad died, right? So I thought that was incredible, right? And then the Roman people loved that. After the death of Nero, right, there was a period of chaos and civil war in Rome, right? Like it was very, very, very chaotic and traumatic for the Roman people. It hadn't been a civil war in a long time, and there was a year, right? There were 4 emperors, AD 69, right? So this is 69 years after the birth of Christ, right? So first century, and at the end, this military general comes ahead. His name is Vespasian, right? And he is named crown emperor, right? So in that area of Rome where the Colosseum is now, there used to be a park that was built by Nero, and it was a public park, right, where everybody could walk in. We think, right, historians think that it was open to the public, and there were fountains and there were lakes and gardens, right? So Vespasian and the old timers like him associated that with disorder, because it was not everybody could participate in this, and high class and low class and women and men could intermingle. Right, so he leveled that, destroyed it. It's like enough, and then filled the lake with concrete, right? And then he had this prime real estate with nothing on it, right? And what we're going to build here? Let's build something truly Roman, right? Something that we can display the greatness of our new dynasty, right? The Flavian dynasty. Let's build a huge amphitheater, and they call it the Flavian Amphitheater. Vespasian died before it was inaugurated. We believe it was around 80 AD, so 10 years later. It took about 10 years to construct, right? Okay. And it was the largest amphitheater in existence at the time, right? Magnificent. His son Titus is the one that inaugurated the amphitheater. And during the inauguration games, we're talking about thousands of animals and gladiators participated during this, right? Animals from all over exotic places of the empire. So what is the purpose for all this? Well, entertain, right? That's always going to be one, right? The spectacle, right? Romans is said that were addicted to the blood sport, but there's also a ritual part of it, which there's an event that happens in Rome around that time that a lot of people will instantly recognize, right? Can you guys guess? I'm talking about AD 80 or so. No? Pompeii, right? So there's a big volcanic eruption, right?
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
I don't think it was birth there.
No. Pompeii, right? So Pompeii, AD 79 maybe? I'm sorry. No notes. I told Gabriel I won't have any notes. So there's gonna be some mistakes here. At AD 79, I think 78. Pompey gets buried by Mount Vesuvius, right? And so many people die, right? So I think Titus and Vespasian, Titus, right, at the time, they thought they needed to do something for all those dead, right? Again, the ritual, appease the dead, right? Blood sport, right? Sacrifices, right? So there's a ritualistic portion of it. There's also the Romans would use the amphitheater as a way to represent their mythology, right? Their mythology will be represented. Their religion will be a part of it, right? You will have somebody dressed as Hercules fighting a lion live for Romans to look at it and associate with, right? And then finally, the last reason why this emblematic building served the Caesars was to showcase the empire to the people of Rome, right? There was always a lot of anxiety that the people of Rome were too distant from the wars and the empire, right? They hadn't feel it in a long time. So you dress gladiators as Rome's enemies, right? And then you show them getting beat up, right? As a way to showcase the people that Rome was still strong and potent and able to defeat their enemies, right? And then of course, talking about the wild beasts, right? The animals from all over the empire, right? That will be brought to the Colosseum to get killed, right? So these animals are often associated with their enemies, right? So you have lions from Africa, tigers from the east, right? Bears from up north, right? And they'll fight each other and fight the gladiators, right? And we're talking about the thousands. There were, I believe it was up to 9,000 animals that were displayed during the inauguration games that died. So absolutely meant to be stupefying, meant to be spectacular, and meant to be awe, right? And the people of Rome are shown the prowess of their empire through the gladiatorial games.
So you talk about like they would reenact battles, things of that nature. Was it like kind of our sporting events? Like you could find a Roman legion recruiter there? Like,
That I don't know. That I don't know, but
like I don't know if that was, hey, look, you can see the world.
Yeah.
And
it is. I mean, I don't know. I will imagine. I don't think we can know that, but I will imagine that if I recall correctly, actually, most of the legionnaires that didn't came from Rome itself, that were recruited from the provinces. It was believed by the military commanders and military men that people from the cities didn't make good soldiers, so they go on a hunt, they go on to recruit farmers and stuff like that that were strong. It was believed that people in the cities were feeble and weak.
So, as we kind of talked about earlier, this is a more modern day, so it's in a deteriorated state to represent kind of what it looks like today. So, if it was created or built or finished, inaugurated in 80 AD or around that time, how did it kind of transition to where it's at today?
Sure. So for a ancient building of that time, right, almost 2,000 years, is very well preserved, given the fact that, for example, the Circus Maximus, which was the older Rome's large spectacle, right? That's what they did the chariot races. There's not much left of it, right? So it's actually been pretty well conserved, and it's because it found itself to be used for other purposes than to a gladiatorial arena, right? So the empire transitions into becomes a Christian, right, after Constantine, right? So in his last 150 years, right, most emperors are Christian, right? And then gladiatorial fights start phasing out, right? It's not compatible with Christian belief, right? Which a lot of our mortal code we still have today, right? Violence is bad. You know, the strong shouldn't abuse the weak, right? Things like that. That the Romans will be like, of course, the strong are supposed to abuse the weak. That's how it is. You know, like that framework, that moral code, did not exist to the Romans until Christianity came, right? So it stops. It's stops being used as an arena. I think by the end of the Roman Empire, 481, 82, 88. Anybody can check me on that. Again, I don't have any notes, right? But it's very debated when the Western Roman Empire actually falls, right? But that time, it's probably not being used as a gladiatorial arena anymore. At one point, shortly after, it becomes a castle, right? And then throughout history, other uses, a prison, I believe, right? A chapel, a monument for Christians that were supposedly sacrificed in the arena, which there's no proof of that, but that has been portrayed in movies and books like that.
really, there's no
proof that Christians were ever like sacrificed into the Colosseum.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a myth that came somewhere in the 18th, 19th century. Yeah, so I mean, it becomes other things, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why it preserves a state most. So yeah, and like I said, today the Colosseum, probably the most emblematic building in Italy, and top 5 in the world. And I think Lego did a great job, actually. So yeah, this is you instantly recognize what it is. You know, you can see the stands, and then as you can see also the platform where the sand will go in, right? And then you have underneath, they will have different type of pulleys and elevators to like bring people up and down, different beasts. So yeah, fantastic model.
All right, so a Roman legionnaire, a soldier, right? How are they viewed by the rest of the world or the outlying provinces? Was it like, oh my gosh, the Romans are marching on us?
I mean, for most of the empire, and you know that changes. I mean, Roman history, classical Roman history, spans almost 1,000 years, right? Western Empire, you want to talk Eastern Empire, you got another 500, 800 years, right? So very, very long period of time, right? So attitudes towards the army changed at one point, right? In the early republic or early monarchy or early times, right? Every Roman citizen, male citizen, was supposed to be a legionary if capable, right? If able to afford arms and stuff, right? So at that point, I mean, you were viewed as any other citizen. right? As the Roman army professionalized itself, and this is during the time right before Caesar and then the civil wars, right? Roman soldiers start serving more and more years. They're not going back to plow their fields or anything like that. That is a period of professionalization and institutionalization of the army, right? Then the attitudes towards the soldiers change. I think in contrast with other attitudes in later ages, like the medieval ages and then the early modern period, Roman soldiers were probably always regarded higher, just because of their record of victory. So one thing that any Roman enthusiast knows is that Rome lost a lot of battles, right? They lost many battles. They lost very few wars.
Okay.
They never quit, and that was what set them apart from every other society. And I think if you were to ask any Roman historian or Roman military historian today why Rome conquered half of the world, the known world, they will say because they never quit. They never stopped until they won the war on their terms. They never ceased. They never had peace treaties that were not favorable to them, right? So you either buckle up, right? If you were Rome's enemies, you either unconditional surrender, become a client state, or they will commit genocide on your entire peoples. And that's how they are. Why is that the case? It's up for debate. It probably has a lot to do with their early history and the way that they were treated by other peoples. But that was one of the things, right? So Hannibal and the Punic Wars, right? You have 3 Punic Wars, right? So you can tell there's a lot of repetition there. And Hannibal destroys 3 or 4 Roman armies, and they still come back. Any other people in the Mediterranean at that time would already sue for peace and drive on doing something else, right? But Rome wouldn't, right? They would keep generating armies, keep generating people until their enemies were defeated. That's what made them special.
Okay.
So we kind of spoke about it a little bit earlier in the video, talking about how Lego does not talk or represent or make any sets that reference modern militaries. However, looking at these minifigs, you do have minifigs with, swords and things, but they refuse to make a modern day soldier with an M16 or an M4
with a fire weapon,
with a fire weapon.
That, right?
But these have likely taken more lives throughout the years in the wars. Kind of, what is your take on that?
Sure, I have an easy answer for that. Time, right? So I think time makes things uncontroversial, right? So this Roman centurion, right? Is usually represented as such, right, with a traversed crest, right, and then holding a gladius, which is the ubiquitous Roman short sword of the legions, right? I heard somebody online, maybe it's like a historian, say that the gladiators have killed almost as many people as the AK-47 has, right? So for a period of 500 years, this was the to-go sword for the Roman legions, short, pointy, and very deadly, right? So anybody at the time, any of Rome's enemies will say like, well, that's definitely an icon of violence and controversy, right? Why is it not for us? I think it's just because all time has passed by, and we cannot longer relate as a society with the damage and the violence and the cruelty that the sword and the centurion had caused, right? So because we don't have direct linkage to those people anymore, so that makes it okay to make a toy of it and play with it because it no longer relates. There's nobody that has been injured by this in the past 300, 400, 600 years, right? So people are not affected by it, and it doesn't create a negative emotion. Just like this fantastic model over here, we can no longer feel the pain of the thousands and thousands of gladiators and their family members, right? That experience because of the games, right? So I think most historians will agree that time passes. He ceases to be relevant. He ceases to have an emotional connection. And I think that most people, that's what it is. It's an emotional connection to the icons that are being represented here, right? So what this represents to me now, right, is different for everybody, right? But this is glamour, right? This is history. This is this is how fancy this guy's looking, right, compared to other barbarians, right? I was because we were doing this, I watched the first part of Gladiator the other day, you know, and
Okay.
they have all the Romans looking so fabulous with their capes and the crests, you know, attacking the Germans who look dirty and barbaric, right? And they're fighting, right? And I thought, like, well, a lot of time, 20 years has passed almost since that movie, right? We have chosen to represent that anymore, right? So empire is not fancy anymore, right? So now our attitudes towards the centurion are probably changing, right? He's probably no longer the good guy like he was in Gladiator, right? He may be represented as a bad guy because we choose to represent history in accordance to our sentiments at the current sentiments, right, and our beliefs at the time, right? So I don't think anybody would choose to represent the Roman Empire in a positive light anymore. They'll probably do it in a negative light. Unlike in the early 2000s, where America was gung ho, right, post 9/11 maybe, or just about, right, we're like biggest dog in the thing, right? So there's a lot of history interpretation of history changes in accordance to what is important at the time, right? So now most people are very anti-imperialistic, right? So this guy may be going back to be the bad guy once again, right?
Sure.
So maybe Lego stops making that. I love this figure. It's great. It's everything that you think of a Roman centurion, right?
Yeah.
A leader of legionaries. Like, we'll imagine a sergeant today or a captain or something in the army, right? A grunt, somebody that's there on the field working and everything. So with his soldiers taking the risks. So I'm glad Lego made it, but I don't know if they're going to continue to do so. Yeah.
I like to point out we don't play with them.
You don't?
We display them.
Yeah.
You don't play with your figurines? I play with my figurines. I still hold them and do my thing. Yeah. So what else you got here?
And we have who I believe is Julius Caesar.
Yeah. Okay. So here Caesar is represented as a statesman, not as a military commander, right? So he's wearing a toga. Surprised that the toga is red because mostly will be white, right? But he has a toga, and then he has a little plate that says "Vini Vidi Vinci," which is probably his most famous quote. I came, I saw, I conquer, right? So he has his wreath, right? This were made of laurel, right? The plant.
Okay. Yeah.
Right, and it was a condecoration. The Romans were one of the first few peoples to actually condecorate their soldiers. That is a sign of institution, right? That will give medals, right? What we understand today as medals. The Romans had a series of different rankings for medals. Caesar achieved one important one. It was for saving somebody's life, and then he wore the crown for the rest of his life. On his head during public occasions and stuff like that. They will applaud that, right? They're heroes. He wore an important one, a crown civicus, right? Again, I could be corrected on that. No notes. Okay. But yeah, he was recognizable by that, right? And then I think emperors later on just chose to wear it, even they haven't earned it as a condecoration because he was associated with Caesar, right? Incredible character with a lot of legacy, right? Did you know that what do we call Russian former Russian kings and queens, right? Tsar, Caesar, right? Comes from that, and then like the German king was called Kaiser, right? Which means also Caesar, right? So to be for like centuries and centuries, the rulers of different countries they call your name. So imagine how consequential he was to the legacy of the Western culture and everything else, right? So also great figure, portrayed as a statesman, right? Not as a military commander. And then I see you have here different gladiators, right? Looking rough and mean. Did this game with the set?
No, those are separate.
Those separate? Okay.
Yeah, these are separate minifigures. So you're right. We have 3 gladiators there.
And you don't play?
No.
Oh, that's terrible. You're gonna leave this here in my house for a little bit, and I'll play with them. Is this your biggest Lego?
No.
No.
I have some Star Wars sets that are bigger.
So what attracted you to buy the Colosseum set?
Look at it.
Okay, yeah,
I get
this is the
that.
Why
Colosseum,
not?
right?
Yeah.
It's recognizable. And you, Justin, do you own any historical Legos?
So the Titanic, I guess, would be a historical.
Yeah, of
Lego.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and it's also my largest set. So
Okay. Well, that's most famous and recognizable
Yeah.
ship, right? So
instantly.
is it on the same kind of series, right? Like recognizable buildings, ships, things, right? Lego. It's a different scale,
Yes.
right? This is not done to scale. It's,
Right.
Yes, it's not done to scale.
okay. So
Yeah,
is the
I mean,
Titanic kind of the same
Titanic
thing?
is what 4 feet in length or something close to that. It's very large.
Okay.
It's, I don't like to move it. It's in the office and it sits there. But it's another very iconic set. Like you have the Colosseum, the Titanic, the Eiffel Tower. There's a few
Okay. Do you think, I guess I should ask myself that question too. Do you think Lego could be used as a tool to get people interested in history?
I mean, I think so. You know, as you just said, there's a lot of rich history
Okay. Yeah.
to this set.
Yeah.
Whether
I agree as well. Like I think, and I'm not sure with this set, but a lot of the bigger, larger sets now, like you can almost have the QR codes that you scan, and they give like a little
Oh, does it?
blurb, and like
Okay.
so you can kind of like learn as you're building.
I wonder.
yeah, I didn't think
story
that there
Lego.
are sometimes backstories.
Yeah,
to-
so it's kind
Okay.
of cool, and I think it also sparks that interest. So not only, and I think that's also why you see some of these in such a large forum, because
Yeah.
it's an instant eye catcher. And then so it's like as a kid, like if I saw something like this, it'd be like I have to have it.
But that's not a toy, right?
Well, no, absolutely not.
Not a toy.
No, right.
Yeah.
But once it's just
So it's just
look,
catered
it's a
to
little-
adults mostly, right?
mainly,
Yeah.
but it is something that's eye catching, and it would inspire like, what is it? Why is it? Where is it? To like,
Sure,
it would
absolutely.
spark that interest. I think.
I think so too. I think you're into something. Yeah. Yeah. So these are toys, right? These are mostly.
They're minifigures.
Minifigs.
Okay, minifigs. And you know, I have my hobby that I will show you guys
Yeah.
later. Yeah, I don't like
Is that
when they call them
is that a toy?
toys now, but I do play with them. So
We'll get into that when we
Yeah.
come.
So you mentioned the minifigs as a toy from Lego. What would you categorize are these also your toys?
they're figurines. Let's call
So it's a
figurines.
minifig and a figurine. Okay.
But unlike you guys, I do play with mine all the time, right? I love to play with my figurines. All right, so my hobby is historical wargaming, which I think it overlaps quite a bit with Lego, right? I think there's this figures, they come unpainted, right? And sometimes you have to build them if they're made of plastic, like this one's right here. Right, you have to put them together, and then you have to prime them, and then you paint them, right? And then once you paint them, you can arrange them in different units. Like here's a unit of Hessian infantry from the American War of Independence, right? And then you can actually, if you built enough of them, you can actually play a game, right? Been doing this hobby for about 20 something years, since I was a young teenager. Right, and as with history is my passion, right, and they quite overlap. So I do mostly historicals. There's some people that do fantasy, right? I have double into it a little bit also. I usually stick to history, and I do almost every period, right? So I'm just showcasing just a very small portion of my collections, and then we can start with from modern to old. Right, to ancient. So here I have my moderns, right, and these are just figures that you recognize from the wars of global war on terror, right? Uniforms that maybe I wore when I was in Iraq or Afghanistan, right?
It looks like a multi-cam, and
Yeah,
they got their
these guys are
Kevlar with the MBG.
the soft guys, right?
Yeah.
So
Got the can on the front.
yeah, sometimes I watch a movie and then I get inspired. So I think I bought this one's after Zero Dark 30. yeah, and then you have enemies, right? And then
Single
there's
cab Toyota.
yeah.
Little Hilux.
Yeah, it's classic, right? With some anti-aircraft gun. I'm not really good with the different types of guns, but that's one of them,
I
right?
don't know if that's a
Double-
ZP.
That was a ZPU.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you guys know. All right. So that you can play a game, right? So I have dozens of moderns, right? And then you have a rule set, right? And then you play a game using tactics, right? That will represent tactics of the day, and different weapon systems or units will have different values, and then they'll fight each other using dice and measuring tape, right? So this is an easy game to play with. Right here, as I said, I have my Hessians, right? I have a large collection of American War of Independence. This is probably my favorite armies that I collected because I researched the uniform and I researched the units. I read books about the Battle of Guilford Courthouse on the southern theater of the Revolution. And then I tried to represent each unit, how they were dressed and how they were organized, right? So this Hessian unit, Van Rawl Regiment, and again, maybe I haven't played with them in a long time, but you see all the buttons, all the cuffs, the tails, right, the pom-poms on top of the hat. These are all historically their uniform that they wore at the time, right? So it takes research, the flag, right, all of that takes a lot of research, and it's part of the gratifying part of the hobby is that while you're painting them according to the uniform, and you can only do it after a certain period, right, when there were uniforms. Before that, there were not, right? Here I have some Southern militia, right, with the Liberty flag, and then an officer leading his troops, right? Probably in this collection, I'll probably have about 800, 900 figurines just like this, arranged in different regiments, and then we'll get it together. We'll fight it.
So you mentioned you assembled the different types. Are there kits? So like with Lego, you can do your pick a brick and kind of design your own, or you do buy the box kits and the sets.
Sure.
Is that something similar with this, or is this all very much individual?
No, so I mean there is a with plastics, right? These are metals, so this is the figure that comes, right? It's just painted metal, so you don't have to, right? When you do plastics like these, right? This you put together yourself, and then you can have different movements, different parts, mix different plastic components to make a different unit, right? So not a single one will look the same. I guess I can go to these now. This is my latest endeavor, which is late Roman army. We're talking about the Roman Empire, right? You're talking about late 4th century and late 5th century, right? These are Roman cataphracts, heavy armor horse, right? They are completely covered in armor. Some people call them proto-knights, right? Because they are so armored. And they don't have stirrups yet, right? So they don't have the weight of the lance like later medieval knights will have. But I'm excited about this one. This company is called Victrix and makes all plastic, right? And they have a lot of options for late Roman, so that's why I decided to do late Roman. And I have already 2 units of these, right? And then I have some commanders. These are Romans too, late, right? So they look very different from what your traditional legionary, the Lego Centurion that we're showing around, right? But nonetheless, there's a continuity with that Centurion, right? This is a different Roman, right? But still Roman nonetheless, and still identifies himself with Roman army. So the plan is to have like these, to have a few dozen of them, right, to make a big army. So this is plastic.
So I got 2 questions.
Sure.
So you have 4 soldiers
Per base.
per base. Does that actually represent a platoon or just 4 soldiers?
To me, you can base them however you want. Some people base them individually. Some people base them all at once, like this one's, right? For the particular game that I play, for a stand works, and then actually it doesn't matter how many are there.
You can just say that's
it's just a regiment.
Oh, it's just a regiment.
Yeah. So when you do like Napoleonic, American War of Independence, like we call it horse and musket era, right? Which is the black powder era, right? Usually just go to the regiment level, right? And then you represent a regiment. You have the actual flag, you have the officer, the NCO, right? And then you have an entire regiment, because that was the most distinctive unit of the period, right? They will have different uniforms. Different regiments have different uniforms, and and everything else. I also wanted to show you that, well, here I have some medievals, right? These are probably one of the best figurines out there. Knights are hard to paint. I love these. They're very dynamic. Their poses are. I have a few of this. As you can see, they're based individually. This is for more of our skirmish game, right? 40 against 40 or so.
Like 40 figures or 40 people?
40 figures.
Okay.
Yeah, so 40 figures, like a skirmish, like a ancient, like a medieval time skirmish, right? And also, so there's different scales, right? So unlike Lego, there's this hobby is pure chaos. Well, I guess you do have scales in Lego.
Yeah.
You do have scale in Lego. You're right. Here you have anything that ranges from 2 millimeter, which is nothing, right, and just to represent massive formations of armies, all the way to, I mean, people play with 64, 72 millimeters, which are like taller, right? So the most popular scales are 15 millimeter, right, or close to it, which is this one here. And then 28. This is 28 millimeter, perhaps the most popular.
And they use millimeter. They don't use they don't use inch.
No, we do that. Barbarians, right? This hobby comes mostly from Great Britain, right, from the UK. So and we use European ways to measure this, right? So yes, millimeter, right? And it goes from like toe to like eyeball, right? That's how you measure it. I don't know why. Yeah, and this, you can see this is a Spanish tercio. Right?
I could not have told you that, but okay.
Yeah, it's a Spanish tercio. I've been talking about modern, beginning of modern warfare, right? Like the 1600s.
Is that like a blunderbuss rifle?
No, it's a musket. It's an early musket. It was so heavy you need a stand.
That's what I was asking to see.
Yeah, you need a stand, and then you pike and shot. That's the period, right? I have a large 50 millimeter pike and shot, and as you can see, you can mask your soldiers, right? So it gives the impression that at a smaller scale you can have more.
So they were at gunpowder and still using spear or lance at this time.
So
and what time frame is this?
So the early modern period, right? We're talking about from the 1450s to the 1680s or so, right? That's when kind of like all this military theorists went back to the classics, right? And they're like, hey, you know, the pikes worked for the Greeks back in the day. What about if we try the pikes, right?
Oh, so this was bringing back an old TTP?
Kind of. They were looking back. You know, it's a period where like a transition from the medieval feudal mindset towards early modern states.
So how long would it take you to approximately to make something like this?
Oh, this whole set? Usually, well, you can do two things, right? You can paint the miniatures individually, and you can almost do like an assembly line. You paint all the faces, you paint all the pants, you paint all the shoes, you paint all the hands, one by one, right? So that's a lot faster, but it's not as rewarding. It takes a long time. I don't have the patience, so I usually just paint individually, and let's say about an hour and a half per figurine, right? Let's say, for me, it's therapeutic. I paint while I listen to a podcast or a book on history. Maybe even it's perfect. It's on the period that I'm painting, you know, so it's even better. And I spend maybe 1 or 2 hours a day. In the weekends, maybe do more, you know, I'm painting and listening to stuff. Yeah.
So when you're doing the tabletop gaming or battle, recreating the battle, is it following the way the battle actually happened, or are y'all like,
I'll take away all the fun? So
okay, so it's not.
Yeah, so usually
so Napoleon could win at Waterloo.
Well, that's the point, right? So usually you're trying to. So for the Battle of Guildford Courthouse, which is small enough that you can have all the regiments represented, right? We'll set up how the battle was set up with all the regiments where they're supposed to be at, but then the player has autonomy to move the units however they want, and then you test if the battle could have gone differently, if it would have been a different thing. So you're trying to get a set of rules that is very approximate to how it would be in reality, right? And then you're trying to see, like, okay, well, if Daniel Morgan would have gone this way, or if Colonel so and so of the British Army, Tarleton would have done this, right? How would that change things, right? So then they have autonomy to do whatever they want. Because if not, you just like putting people together, and that's it, right?
So is it a battle recreation, or is it like a campaign?
Some people do campaigns,
So
so
like it could take months of.
yeah,
game,
absolutely. So the designers of this miniatures in particular, they call it Perry Brothers, and they have a long range of different, from Napoleonic, they have some medievals, they have a lot of 1800s, right? They're legendary for long campaigns, a series of battles that they put together with their miniatures, and they're very inspiring, right? So every miniature collector kind of tries to like do something like that. I never done a long campaign with my miniatures, maybe when I was a kid, but now you only get together once in a while, so you just put a battle together. They take about 4 or 5 hours, maybe more. So yeah, it's a fun day. Just in the house all day, just rolling dice and just talking with each other, arguing about inches or millimeters of distance, and like a crooked dice or something like that. It's a lot of fighting, yeah.
People saying the uniform's wrong for the period.
I hate that. Yeah. And like I said, I didn't have any notes today, so I'm sure I said things that I was not supposed to. They're incorrect. And then there will be people that will be like, the top pom-pom in this one on the B company is supposed to be pink, not that shade though. Like, the buttons are gold, they're supposed to be silver, and they're like, yeah, leave me alone. So I try to be as accurate as I can within reasonable means, right? Like.
So that's it for this video. I want to thank Steve for sharing his knowledge on history, his military figures and wargaming hobby, and most importantly, his home. I also want to thank Justin for helping once again and for sharing his love of Ohio. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and see everyone next time.